This is Tennyson E Stead, writer and director of Quantum Theory, founder of 8-Sided Films, here with another 8-Sided blog. One of the things that happened between Thanksgiving and the end of the year is that I adapted my first novel into a feature film. I can't talk about the process. I can talk about the process because the writer of the novel is the person who hired me as a ghostwriter to come in and do the work, and he hasn't paid me for the work. That is a separate conversation for another time. But it was an exciting process, and I learned a lot from it, and I can talk a little bit about not necessarily the content of the book. It was a gangster project, I can say that much. And certainly not about the conversations that are going on between me and the author of the book, but I can talk about the process of adaptation and how it felt, sort of taking what I understood about that process and putting it into practice. And what I knew about the process going in, I mean, obviously I've done a lot of reading. I've worked on stage and as a dramaturg enough times to be able to siphon for a writer's intent and to preserve that intent as you go into any kind of production. So the process, I think, of adapting a novel into a screenplay isn't really so much different than the process of producing a play. It's about ferreting out what is actually at the core of what's on the page, and then handing that to a group of actors in a format and in a way that communicates what's on the page to the audience without any fluff, without any extra stuff thrown in. And in the case of a screenplay, as probably most of our viewers know, there's accepted structure when it comes to how Hollywood reads screenplays. There's 3 acts that you want the story to be laid out in, and that's good. It's good because not just because you're meeting the audience's expectations and you're sort of lulling them into some sense of complacency. That's not the point. The point is that the structure actually works. When you have an action, which is what cinema is, it's about people doing stuff. It's not about ideas. It's not about the language. It's about what is this character doing? What is that character doing? How do those two actions bring them into conflict? What makes those actions important enough to see the conflict through? That is what people refer to as motivation. So, what are the actions of these characters? What are the motivations of these characters? And those are things that novelists don't really have to contend with. Motivations in a novel aren't necessarily important. What's important in a novel is the theme and the ideas that you're communicating and how the words and the language of the book bring that theme out into the mind of the reader. And we can have other discussions as well about what it means when that isn't necessarily done with a huge amount of, this man hasn't paid me and I'm a little frustrated. I'll put it to you that way. But that doesn't mean it's time to sit here and talk about my creative observations about the book on the page. What I can say is that regardless of what is on that page, whether it's good, whether it's bad, regardless of the ideas that are being communicated and how they're communicated, or even how well they're communicated from a novelistic standpoint, it is always possible to dig through that material and find the latent activity that can define or should define the main character of that story. What is this person doing? And if they're not really doing anything, if the book isn't about somebody doing something, if it's about other things, then what action would lead them through all of the observations and all of the commentary and all of the ideas that are actually in that book? What action would string together those beads and tie them together into a necklace? And that's what the process of film adaptation actually is. And then once you have that for the main character, you go and you develop that for all of the other characters in the story, and the characters should be in that story only as long as their actions are relevant to the action that the movie's about, which is the action of the protagonist. So this was the first time that I took someone else's work and I parsed it for all of that information, and then wrote a screenplay for actors to perform based on what I saw on the page. And between you and me, you know, I have a difference of opinion with the author of the book about whether or not that work was done well. But I was genuinely proud of the results that I got, and I think that, you know, as a person undergoing that process, and as someone who took that book and broke it down and made it into a screenplay, I have a lot to take away from this process. I showed the screenplay to one or two other proofreaders before passing it back to the writer, and the feedback was very positive that I was getting, and you know, it felt good in the moment to be taking someone's dream, someone's ambition, someone's idea, you know, something that certainly they're very attached to and very proud of and very invested in, to be taking that and honing it and shaping it into an effective feature film script. That for me was more rewarding than I expected it to be. It's too bad that not everybody involved in the project sees it that way. But it was enjoyable. I would do it again. I would do it again, provided I was getting the kind of feedback from the writer that let me know that my process and my approach was correct, and provided that the people involved took the time to understand my work and what I do well enough to feel confident that I was the right person for the job. You know, provided everything's been vetted in the right way and that we all know we're collaborating with the right people. I think adapting novels is something I would like to do in the future. So that's basically how I spent the last half of November and the first half of December. And all in all, I feel it was successful, and I enjoyed it. And that's what this blog's been about. So thank you for watching. Please give us a thumbs up if you like these videos. And if you have any questions, you can find me on Twitter at Tennyson, Tennyson E Stead, Stead. You can always find me and Lee Holm at 8-Sided Films, the number 8. And I'll catch you on the next blog. Take care. Bye-bye.